Good afternoon. It's May 23rd, 2019, and welcome to the first entry of the Buckner Sports Zone podcast. My name is Michael Buckner, president and shareholder of the Buckner Law Firm. This podcast will cover topical issues impacting or influencing college, professional, and amateur sports. Eventually, we'll add a video component to this podcast, and we'll also have some special guests from time to time. So I'm really looking forward to this podcast because it will allow me to share some of my knowledge with you regarding just things that are going on in sports that somehow impact the law. So before we begin, I want to inform you that the information discussed during this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed or to legal advice in any manner. Do not act or refrain from acting upon this information without seeking professional legal counsel. Now, of course, I'm a lawyer, have to give a disclaimer, of course. So let's start today. Today's topic, and our only topic today, is talking about the ban by the National Football League on high impact drills and a summary of the law behind such a ban. As many of you know, USA Today and other media outlets reported on May 22nd of this year that the NFL banned high impact practice drills that have been leading to an increase in concussions and other serious injuries during training camps and practices. According to these media reports, the drills targeted in this NFL ban included the half line drill, the bull in the ring drill, and the Oklahoma drill. And if those who are not familiar with some of these drills, I know, for example, the Oklahoma drill or bull in the ring drill, it's where you line up the two players generally several meters or yards away from each other, and they actually go in and they go head first. With their shoulders pads and they have a really high impact as they collide. And it's been my experience because my firm has conducted investigations into what are perceived to be dangerous drills in both men's and women's sports, and our job was to try to determine whether or not those drills, one, caused the serious injury that was alleged, and two, what was the legal liability for that particular organization. So because of those cases, I've learned a little bit about the law. So when I heard about the NFL ban, it wasn't surprising. In fact, I'm surprised the NFL hasn't done this before, because I know a lot of high schools and colleges and universities have already banned some of these high impact drills. And so it's really surprising to me that the NFL, I'm glad the NFL has banned it, but it's a little surprising that they've taken such a long period of time, especially when there's the concussion lawsuits out there against the NFL and other sports organizations that this wasn't thought of earlier. But let me get to the law behind it. And so I'm going to summarize generally what the law is in most states in the United States about the legal liability of sports organizations dealing with injuries to athletes. So generally, the law imposes a standard of care that coaches and other sports professionals owe athletes. And that standard mandates that coaches avoid unreasonably exposing athletes to injury. And that's why you have this ban from the NFL and other sports organizations on these type of drills. So courts, both at the federal level and the state level, they apply principles of negligence in determining liability when, for example, a coach's conduct fails to meet the legal standard designated to protect against unreasonable risks. So generally, courts use the appropriate conduct of a reasonable person under the same or similar circumstances as that legal standard. But courts have broadened the scope of that standard of reasonable care if a special relationship exists between the parties at the time of the injury. So generally, the injuries have that reasonable person standard. But because the sports context is so special, that bond between coach at all levels of sports and the athlete is so close, so specialized that the courts hold coaches to even a higher standard. So, although the application is higher standard of care to high contact sports like football, lacrosse, soccer, hockey, creates this challenge to determine liability for organizations. Courts have carved out a defined set of duties coaches owe athletes. So essentially, what the courts are looking at is you know, is there a foreseeable risk that an athlete is going to be injured by participating in a certain drill, and that coaches have that duty to foresee that risk and to prevent an injury to that athlete from participating in a high impact drill. So, in the context of what's going on with the NFL, because there's been countless litigation at all different levels, because of the concussion litigation, because there is actual studies and analyses, and I'm sure the NFL collects statistics on these as well. There's a lot of body of evidence that would tend to show that the NFL knew or should have known, and they probably do know, of course, that there is a foreseeable risk that their athletes, these professional athletes, participating in these high impact drills, could receive serious injuries, including concussions and other serious injuries to their bodies. And so legally, the NFL is trying to reduce that their legal liability in light of course, the concussion lawsuits. So that type of ban is also I've seen, again, as I mentioned, at the high school and college level. It hasn't been banned entirely by the NCAA, of course. That hasn't been touched. But individually, I know numerous schools have banned those types of drills, and I hope that with the NFL ban, that other college universities will look to the NFL and take it upon themselves to do studies, analyses of what their impact sports are doing in practices, and banning or curtailing the use of these high impact drills. So with that being said, if anyone has any questions about anything dealing with high impact drills and the law behind that, don't hesitate to shoot me an email at michaelbucknerlaw@gmail.com. And that's michaelbucknerlaw@gmail.com. And if you have any future topics or issues that you want me to discuss during a future issue of our podcast, please don't hesitate again to shoot me an email at michaelbucknerlaw@gmail.com. Thanks again. I know this is a very short first entry, but in the future entries, we'll have additional topics where we would cover at least 2 or 3 topics per entry. So again, thank you so much for joining us for our first entry of the Buckner Sports Zone podcast. Take care.